Welcome to Thinking Deeper by 6-7. We're exploring the wild intersection of extreme wealth, spectacular ruin, and ancient faith. This is the story of a self-proclaimed redneck who built a million-dollar real estate empire by age 26, lost it all in a devastating crash, cried in his shower facing bankruptcy, and then rebuilt his life, and a massive financial movement using ancient biblical principles.
It really is a fascinating journey.
It totally is. Today, we're unpacking Dave Ramsey's highly personal narrative. We're tracing his transition from this, totally secular money-chasing mindset to a life entirely surrendered to God.
Right.
And we'll be detailing the 5 specific, practical financial principles he extracted from Scripture along the way. Also, real quick, if you like my channel, please subscribe and hit the like button.
So just to give some context before we jump in, we need to establish that this isn't just a list of budgeting tips.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It's a really profound look at how foundational belief systems alter human behavior. Specifically, we're looking at the shift from living randomly, where success is just outsmarting the system, to understanding a divine cause and effect.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it completely changes something as mundane as, like, how you swipe your debit card.
Well, before we can even talk about the money rules, we have to understand the crisis that forced him to seek those rules out in the first place.
So the origin story, basically.
Exactly. And it starts incredibly humbly. He grew up in Antioch, Tennessee, which he describes as a place where work was a verb, not some management theory.
Right.
And he and his wife, Sharon, they started out with literally nothing. They were eating off a card table, driving a 1902 Pinto, which he jokes is a car, not a bean.
That's a rough start. And, their worldviews back then were deeply divided, which kind of sets up the whole tension of his early life.
Oh, totally. You have this distinct clash right in their living room. His wife goes to a Baptist church, and he just stays home. He's totally secular at this point.
Yeah, he explicitly says his Sunday routine was drinking beer and watching football while the congregation prayed for her, quote, heathen husband.
Heathen husband. Yeah, he was entirely focused on the material world.
Yeah.
He actually gets caught up in a multi-level marketing scheme, just desperately trying to get rich.
Looking for the shortcut.
Exactly. So he and his buddy attend this massive MLM seminar, looking for the secret to get yachts and huge checks. And the keynote speaker, a wealthy guy ironically named Rich.
Of course.
Right. He totally shocks them by saying, if you don't know God, you're going to struggle in business.
And that moment is so pivotal because, well, the man at the seminar explains that serving actually beats taking.
Wait, how does that work in a cutthroat business world?
Well, in a purely secular, materialistic mindset, business is often zero-sum. Like, I need to take your money to enrich myself. But in this faith-based model, the focus shifts to creating value. Servants win because people want to do business with those who actually solve their problems.
That is a huge paradigm shift. But, he doesn't convert overnight. He leaves that MLM and starts flipping houses. And this is where the meteoric rise happens.
Right, the $4 million portfolio.
Yeah. By age 26, he has a $4 million real estate empire. He's making $250,000 a year in cash, buys the Jaguar, gets his wife diamonds in Hawaii.
He thinks he's completely won the game.
He does. But then, the crash. The bank holding his loans gets sold out of state. The new bank calls in his $1.2 million in 90-day notes.
We should probably clarify that for the listener. A 90-day note is a short-term commercial loan. He was funding long-term real estate with really short-term debt.
Which is incredibly risky.
Extremely. So the new bank simply decided to limit their relationship. He wasn't late on payments. They just legally demanded $1.2 million immediately, which he obviously didn't have in cash.
That is basically like playing a high-stakes board game.
Yeah.
Right? You own all the properties, and suddenly the bank just changes the rules mid-turn and demands all its money back. You're wiped out.
That's a perfect analogy.
And the reality of his crash is, it's darkly humorous. He's getting sued so often that Sharon is baking cookies for Harold, the sheriff's deputy serving the lawsuit papers.
Man, baking cookies for the repo guy.
Yeah. They hit absolute rock bottom. He says, you don't bounce from that height, you go splat. He's crying in the shower, almost divorcing since money fights are the #1 cause of divorce, and he finally just raises the white flag.
Absolute surrender.
Right. He realizes relying on his own intellect and his broke college finance professor led to ruin. So I have to ask, does an ego-shattering event like a total financial wipeout strip away a purely secular worldview?
Well, psychologically speaking, yes. Crisis almost always precedes transformation. When you're making $250,000 and driving a Jag, your ego says you're the master of the
They
universe.
don't think you need any help.
Exactly. The illusion of control is strong. But when the bank calls the notes, that insulation shatters. Surrendering in the shower was his acknowledgement that his operating system was fundamentally broken.
Right.
And he realizes that God is a crock pot guy, not a microwave.
Oh, I love that analogy.
It emphasizes that true behavioral change requires long-term simmering. The microwave mentality, instant gratification, get-rich-quick schemes, that's what caused the splat.
Okay, so he surrenders. But that doesn't stop Harold from serving papers. How does he translate that spiritual shift into actual mechanics?
He turns to the Bible for practical instruction.
Right, which leads to principle 1. Get on a written budget. He pulls from Jesus' teaching about counting the cost before building a tower so you don't run out of money and get mocked by the town.
It's about intentionality.
Yeah. He asked the listener to think of themselves as you incorporated. Like if you looked at your bank statements from last month as the CEO, would you fire yourself for mismanagement?
That framing forces immediate accountability, doesn't it? He also pairs that with the parable of the talents.
Oh, remind me how that one goes.
So it's a story where a master gives 3 servants different amounts of money. 2 invest and double it and get rewarded. The third is terrified, buries it in the dirt, and gets severely reprimanded.
Right, so you have to prove you can manage a little before you get a lot.
Exactly. Faithful stewardship.
He illustrates that with this hilarious story about his 15-year-old son. The kid wants a 465 horsepower Corvette.
What teenager wouldn't?
Right. But the speaker tells him, as a loving father, you are incompetent to drive a rocket ship. You'd wrap it around a tree. So the kid gets an old Chevette with a, quote, tired gerbil under the hood.
Which perfectly represents budgeting. It's the financial Chevette. Prove competence before you manage real wealth.
That brings us to principle 2, which is intense. Get out of debt. He notes the Bible says the borrower is slave to the lender.
But he makes a careful distinction here, right?
Yes, very careful. He says debt isn't a sin. It's not a salvation issue. But the text essentially calls it stupid. And the math is wild. The average car payment is $499.
That's a lot of money every month.
It is. And he says if you invest that from age 30 to 70, it yields $5.6 million. He argues debt just enriches Ford or Lexus, not you.
That $5.6 million figure is the ultimate lesson in opportunity cost. You aren't just losing the $499, you're losing the decades of compound interest.
It's like jumping on a treadmill where the bank controls the remote. Eventually you stumble. And he practices this. 30 years, no credit cards, just green presidents' faces, debit cards, a driver's license, and his handgun permit.
A very specific wallet.
Right. He jokes, I've never met a millionaire who made it on airline miles. And, he frames this around extreme personal responsibility. He complains about political promises and waiting for the government to fix his life, saying neither party got the goods.
And we should state clearly, we're impartially reporting his view here. We aren't endorsing any political side.
Oh, absolutely. We're just highlighting his emphasis on personal responsibility over relying on external institutions. But I have to push back. In a modern economy, isn't debt a necessary tool for leverage?
Purely mathematically. Sure, leverage amplifies returns. But he's approaching this behaviorally. Removing debt reintroduces friction. It forces you to live in the present moment with the resources you actually possess.
So it's about the psychological pain of spending cash.
Exactly. When a massive portion of your income is legally spoken for by lenders, you lose the freedom to pivot or to weather a storm. You are a slave to the lender.
Okay, that makes sense. So taking control of cash flow is internal. But principle 3 looks outward. Foster high-quality relationships.
This is where environment matters.
Right. He quotes Charlie Tremendous Jones. 5 years from today, you'll be the same person you are today except for the books you read and the people you meet. He claims your income gets within 10 to 20% of your 10 closest friends.
Sociological research totally backs that up. You adopt the habits and risk tolerance of your peer group?
He uses this parenting anecdote, saying he didn't allow missionary dating. His daughters couldn't date little Johnny the Weedhead to try and save him. If a boy honks the horn, he better be delivering a pizza.
That's classic.
But applied to adults, does building wealth biblically require a person to just coldly cut ties with less ambitious peers?
It sounds ruthless, but he clarifies he isn't advocating for snobbery. He talks to everyone. It's about intentionality in your, quote, closest hangs.
Oh, so who you let influence you.
Yes, the cause and effect theme again. If you plant corn, you get corn, not beans. If your inner circle complains and plays the victim, that takes root in you. You have to choose voices that foster discipline.
Which sets up Principle 4 nicely. Save and invest. He quotes Proverbs saying, "Wise people store choice food and oil, while a fool devours all he has."
And oil in the ancient world was a symbol of commerce and wealth.
Yeah, he compares saving oil to the fine Charleston food scene, while devouring everything leaves you eating plain hummus and bread.
Which goes back to his grandma's rainy day wisdom.
Exactly, contrasting Grandma's wisdom with the modern folly of spending everything and relying on the government, which he humorously claims lacks opposable thumbs.
Again, reinforcing the individual as the primary steward of their own future.
Okay, so let's look at the final piece. You budget, clear your debt, curate your friends, and save your oil. You accumulate wealth. But to what end?
Right, what's the point?
Principle 5 reveals the true purpose. Be a cheerful giver. He says tithing is just the baseline. Generosity is a spirit. He argues money acts as a magnifier.
The magnification effect is so crucial here.
It's like a magnifying glass under the sun. It focuses your character to start a fire. If you're a jerk, money makes you a colossal jerk. If you're kind, money makes you a philanthropist.
Right, it just amplifies who you already are.
He gives vivid examples, picking up spilled groceries, leaving massive tips. He even calls out cheap Christians who leave terrible tips on Sundays.
Oh, servers hate the Sunday lunch crowd.
Totally. His personal rule is wild. He gives a $20 or $40 tip to the valet parking his $130,000 car. And if the kid says his catchphrase, "better than I deserve," which means they're getting out of debt, he doubles the tip.
That's amazing.
The ultimate thesis is, you can't claim to be made in God's image, the ultimate giver, if you are stingy. Doing these 5 things changes your family tree forever.
You know, stepping back, this ties the entire deep dive together. This 5-step process isn't really a financial plan, it's a behavioral modification program.
Wait, a behavioral program disguised as a budgeting class.
Exactly. Think about his arc. He started with immense wealth, but a massive secular ego. The crash destroyed that. Rebuilding through budgeting, avoiding debt, and saving forces discipline.
Oh, I see.
But this final step, extreme generosity, ensures the new wealth doesn't just inflate his ego again. It transforms him from a consumer into a conduit, serving others.
Which mirrors that very first MLM seminar, Advice Servants Win.
Precisely. The money rules are just the physical mechanics for a character transformation.
Wow, what an incredible journey we've traced today. From the arrogance of a $4 million empire, through a tear-soaked bankruptcy, to a radical shower surrender. We covered acting like the CEO of You Inc., aggressively cutting debt, curating relationships, saving for rainy days, and cheerful generosity. It's a total paradigm shift.
It really is, and I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to ponder. If a completely unexpected crisis wiped out your bank accounts tomorrow and your safety nets vanished, what foundational, unshakable principles would you rely on to rebuild from scratch? Would your current habits set you up for a splat or a meaningful recovery?
That is a heavy but vital question to mull over. Until next time, keep thinking deeper.